all the coverage rolling along this week. I'll tell you my thoughts from the first week of training camp. I want to roll out a couple of tweets of just some takes that we've seen from Jaguars fans online. I asked fans how they were feeling after that first week of action. I got one in here that says, look, need to be a better week from Trevor this week. That's fair enough. See Bass Sports, I understand it. This was not the cleanest of weeks from Trevor Lawrence. Definitely some mistakes along the way. A few more interceptions than I think the coaching staff or anybody would like to see out there. But still the first week of training camp. Take everything with a grain of salt. One more that I want to bring up. This one comes from John, and he says, having to face adversity right off the bat in training camp is going to pay dividends when it comes to the mid and end of the season. And I picked out this one specifically because I think John might have hit it on the head. You go through this adversity now, early in training camp, and you have an opportunity to learn from it rather than you wait and you hit that wall in the middle of the season, maybe similar to what you saw not that long ago. Oh, wait, that was just last season for the Jaguars. I got a chance to catch up with Mitch Morris, the brand new Jaguars center, after practice on Saturday. Mitch said that it's not time to panic, that these are learning opportunities, and it's just on the team to learn from these mistakes.
If you panic is when you make decisions or you act outside of yourself, and rarely is that constructive, right? Like it's okay because it's stern. Like as football players, we're our biggest critics, right? And each person receives criticism and gets that fire intrinsically differently. But that's why coaches like you look for those great coaches that can bring everyone up in a constructive way, push you to be your best version of yourself, even during days like this where it's day 4 in the heat and you're dragging a little bit, like what's going to bring us together. So it's a great moment it's a great time to have these moments. And, the thing is, it's on us to learn from them.
Again, we don't put the most value on scripted practices and things we're doing. We understand, both groups, both sides of the ball understand we're trying to get something accomplished with this period. Red zone 7-on-7, we're putting in 6 concepts, they're putting in 4 coverages, and let's just mix and match and see how it goes. We continue to build these tapes as we teach. Our guys understand we may not run certain concepts against 2 high coverages. They may only have 2 high coverages in today. Through the course of the season, you're going to get caught at times where something was different than you expected, and you got to be able to do the right thing with football. You got to be able to adjust your route accordingly, and those are the situations we want our guys to see right now as we continue to build this thing out.
So a little bit of an explanation of the offensive struggles from center Mitch Morris and Jaguars offensive coordinator Press Taylor. But let's talk about it a little bit. So through the first week, the Jaguars offense has struggled. There's no way around it. The defense looks ahead of the Jaguars offense. They have pulled up with interceptions off of guys just about every day. Trevor Lawrence has not looked crisp. He hasn't looked great out there on the training camp field. But the sky's not falling. It's not the end of the world. First week of training camp. Rust is real. They're trying to get new things accomplished. Mitch Morris kind of, during our conversation, mentioned that a lot of times coaching staffs like to put offenses in positions that they struggled at the year before early on in training camp to see where there's been growth and if they can figure out solutions to where the problems were. Hence why the Jaguars were throwing the ball exclusively in red zone periods for the first 2 days of training camp, really. Now they continue to struggle, so that's not great, but it's not the end of the world. There's still plenty of time to get better. So I'm far from concerned about Trevor Lawrence or the Jaguars offense or where it's going to be. During one of my training camp notebooks, I kind of wrote this up. This is kind of the polar opposite, complete polar shift of where we were a year ago. Last year during training camp, after the first week, everything was great, sunshine and rainbows, and the expectations for the Jaguars offense were sky high. Calvin Ridley looked fantastic. There were new highlights every day during training camp. This guy out there on the practice field, Trevor Lawrence, Calvin Ridley, touchdown, big catch, whatever it may be. This year, everybody's still waiting for Brian Thomas Jr.'s light to come on out there on the practice field, and the offense doesn't look crisp. There haven't been those highlight reel plays every day, and the excitement is now in the complete opposite direction. Last year's overexcitement proved to be wrong. The Jaguars offense struggled out of the gates. This year's underexcitement likely will prove to be wrong, and hopefully that means that the opposite, the Jaguars offense, will hit the ground running to start the season. Now, we'll see what happens, but the other end of the spectrum also is that the Jaguars defense is taking to what Ryan Nielsen is coaching, and they're taking to it very well. So Ryan Nielsen's defense is new. There's a lot of new things going on, and they have a lot that they have to install and learn, while the Jaguars offense is the same thing that Doug Peterson's been putting in, and with a lot of the same players coming back. So you need to see that cohesion from the Jaguars defensive unit and that there's not confusion and that they're handling this new coverage that they haven't done before. And through the first week of camp, all smiles, 2 thumbs up, the Jaguars defense has been rolling. They look like they're on the same page and that they understand what Ryan Nielsen wants them to do, which is a good sign. Now, I'm not ready to say that this is the return of Saxonville or Saxonville 2.0 or anything like that. Let's wait till the pads go on next week before we start making those sorts of confident statements that this defense is going to be just some dominant unit that people are going to talk about for years to come. But this is a good sign of things going in the right direction for this unit with the new defensive coaching staff, with what they'd like to do. So, wow, the first week of training camp is always overreaction season. We always like to make these resounding statements from just a couple of days out there on the field and what you've seen from guys during these pre-planned periods where coverages are strange and the offense, as you heard from Press Taylor, might only be using a couple of plays. Let's take a deep breath. Let's wait for them to put the pads on because, well, the game's played in pads, not shorts, not just jerseys. They play in pads. So let's wait for next week. If they struggle at the end of next week, then maybe we have to sit down and have a fireside chat and try and work through some problems. But right now, the sky is far from falling, and there's a whole lot of positives that are out there of some young players that are stepping in the right direction. While we haven't seen much from Brian Thomas Jr., Jarian Jones has looked fantastic, and so has Ronald Darby. That battle for that second cornerback job looks like it's going to be one that's going to be tough to sit down the other guy because both of them have looked really good out there on the field. Devin Duvernay, I think he's been better than advertised as a wide receiver. He's made some deep catches just about every day so far during training camp. So he's a guy that might actually have a bigger role in the Jaguars offense than I expected him to. Joshua Cephas, undrafted free agent. He's a guy that a lot of people expected to make waves. Well, he's making those waves. And he's a guy that looks like he's primed for an opportunity to make a push to make the Jaguars roster. So those are some of the bright spots that you can focus on. And we want to see those guys continue to stack those good days and build upon something. But again, we got to see it again next week when the pads go on. But we'll talk all about that tomorrow night during the next episode of Teal the Show. We'll have Frank Frangie coming your way. Jaguars are back out on the practice field tomorrow, so we'll have all the coverage from tomorrow's practice in tomorrow's episode of Teal the Show. That's going to come your way at 11:20 tomorrow night right here on Channel 4. It's a good way to keep up with the Jaguars all year long. We're already rolling, keeping you up to date during training camp, and we're going to keep them rolling all the way until whenever the Jaguars stop playing. You can also keep up with the Jaguars by checking out that News for Jags podcast. New episodes are coming out all the time. You can track those down over on newsforjags.com if you click on that handy dandy sports page or anywhere that you get your podcasts. All you have to do is subscribe while you're there. We've got new News for Jags podcasts coming out after each Jaguars training camp practice. So it is a good way to keep up with everything as it's off and rolling.